It's still starting.
Yay! We're live.
All right, yay! We're live.
Is it working? I want to.
It says we're live.
Yay! I'm so
So
excited.
anyone can give us a comment and let me know we're live if you're on this call already. So I'm Courtney here with Emily. We're going to get started on our call tonight of celebration of devotion. Start with some intro. I'm Courtney Sage, and I am super excited to be here. Super excited to celebrate with you guys, and super excited to talk about devotion. I'm a massage therapist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm also a holistic lifestyle coach. I don't know, this year has been wild, and I am excited to talk about all that's changed. I really feel like this year has been a lot of kind of being a little seedling under the ground, starting to grow, and about to kind of like exciting and inspiring. I'm super happy to be here with Emily, who is in her that helped me get me started where I am today. So Emily, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little about you and what you do and what you have going on right now, because I know you have a lot of good stuff coming up to offer these ladies.
Oh my gosh, so many cool things. Well, hi everyone. I'm Emily Castle. For those of you who haven't met me and who I haven't met yet, it's really exciting. I think there were a lot of women who I was super excited to see sign up for this call because I haven't had the opportunity to really connect with them yet. So I'm super excited about that. So I am a women's leadership coach in Charleston, South Carolina, but I work with women all over the world, from Turkey to Canada to Norway to Pittsburgh. I have clients everywhere, which is super fun and exciting, and feels like a huge success in my life to be able to say that after only a few years in business. Like a year ago, that would have felt like unreal to me to be able to say those things. So I'm super excited to be able to reflect on what's happening and what's happened this year, and celebrate the success and celebrate what our themes of devotion have brought us and taught us, and share that with all of you tonight. So what I have going on is I do a lot of private coaching, and I have a couple of spots open for that in 2017. I also am running a new program called the Feminine Leadership Mastermind, which is super exciting. And there are some incredible women in the program already, and we're already talking and getting excited. We start on January 10th. So officially with our first call together as a community. So that's something that I'm working on as well. And there are still a few spots available. If anyone's interested in joining that, you can reach out to me after the call. And let's see what else. Yeah, I moved to Charleston in April, which I'll talk about when we do some reflections and celebrations. But I was living in Pittsburgh, and that's how Courtney and I met initially. We were working, actually, I think we officially met working a wedding for a friend who it was just a random side job thing that we had no business really being at otherwise, that it was just a synchronous moment. And I was just starting my coaching business. I think it was the summer, maybe June of 2014. Is that right?
I think 2 years ago.
Yeah. So it was before I even had left my full-time job. I literally just started Mentor Masterclass, the coach training program that we both have been through. And we were both working this wedding event, and it was super fun. And I was like, I said in the kitchen, I was like, I wonder if there's anybody, I really would love to, I was just voicing a desire to trade coaching for massage. And I didn't even know that she was a massage therapist at all. And I think Becky, our mutual friend, was like, Courtney's a massage therapist. She'll probably trade with you. I was like, cool. So then we talked. And then I found out that I don't know if you were in the program at this point in time, but you were in IIN. at some point.
Yeah, I was just about to start IIN, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And so we started like working together and doing sort of like, I was coaching her, she was massaging me. It was this beautiful like exchange that felt so awesome together, that we were like swapping things. And when I was on the table, I'd tell her about what we were doing in Mentor Masterclass, and she was like, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll join that, which she ended up doing. And yeah, I mean, we've been like really great, I mean, best friends for a long time. It seems funny to say best friends now in this world of like being in sisterhood with so many women. It sounds like a weird thing, but we've been very close sisters for a while since then. So it's been such a cool thing that we both were drawn to the theme of devotion for 2016. So yeah, if there's anything you want to say about that, go ahead.
No, I just feel so grateful that that all came together, because really, without having been working with you, I wouldn't have got to this place of knowing Mentor Masterclass. I mean, I feel like you are always drawn to what you're meant to be at, so maybe I would have found it another way, but you were really the one that introduced me to this holiday challenge that's going on now, and that's how I ended up joining the program. And that year was the first year that I chose a theme for my year, and it was just so interesting. In that first year, I think I like didn't quite get what it meant to have a theme, and just hadn't tuned in quite to all of this different ways of thinking that I've really come through to with coaching, being coached, and now being a coach. And and then this past year choosing a theme, it was so intentional, even though I felt like my theme just came to me, and I just one day was like, devotion, that is what 2016 is going to be all about. I really spent this year keeping that at the forefront of my mind and really keeping it in focus. And I just, it's like, I know I would always text you, or we'd like jump on a call and be like, guess what just happened? It's, once we realized we had the same theme, it was like so fun to have someone to be like, guess what I just learned about devotion? But it really was throughout the year. I just like kept having lessons come up, and it just felt so, I will never not have a theme for my year after this. So I guess, I'll share a little bit about how I came to devotion as my theme. Last year around New Year's, I was about to finish up Mentor Masterclass. I graduated this year in February. And I just felt at that point in transformation where you're kind of like at fake it till you make it. Like you're walking the talk and you're like going through the motions, but it doesn't feel quite like you. Like you haven't fit into your new clothes or your new skin yet. It felt kind of, I just felt a little off at points, or not tuned in or not aligned, but I knew I was there. I knew I was there at this place of where I wanted to be, and this world I was so in love with and so excited about. And devotion just came to me as like, that's what I need to really get over this hump. Because all of 2015, I was doing the work, but not quite seeing the results and not quite getting it. And just felt like there was like that last shove over where I was to where I wanted to be. And I kept missing how to get there. And really, devotion was the key. Like I would like to say I picked the right theme, because it is what got me there. And that was how I came to this theme, was just like really wanting to go 100% into the lifestyle I wanted, the life I wanted, living for myself and how I wanted. And oddly enough, like when I chose devotion, I feel like I expected completely different results and completely different lessons than I came to. But I'm so grateful for that fact too, because part of devotion is definitely being open. So it was just opening up to what the world and the process gave me. So Emily, why did you choose devotion? I'm sure we've talked about this at some point, but I want to hear.
Yeah, I'm trying to like feel back into where I was a year ago and think about, where I was. And the truth is, I think I chose devotion because I was at a space where I was really like up leveling big time in my life and business, and especially in relationships. I was like dating a lot last year in the fall, and I had just left a long relationship. I think we were both sort of in the same boat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had moved out of a boyfriend's place and we had a dog together, and it was like a whole thing, and it was really hard. And I was trying to like really call in high quality men into my life for dating and to have like that soulmate relationship come in. And I thought, devotion is a great word for that piece too. And along the same lines, it was like in my business, I was at a point where I realized I really wanted to be fully devoted to my mission in the world, and that it wasn't just about like making money to get by anymore. It was like, okay, I'm devoting myself to this mission, not just the business. Like the business and the mission are sort of one and the same now, but at the time I think that I wasn't super clear on what the mission really was. I was clear on what the business was, but I wasn't clear on like, okay, how does this business have this mission, and how does that affect and create an impact, and how do I stay focused and committed in a way that feels in flow and feminine for me, so that it wasn't like a commitment or like a like an obligation feeling with my business, but that my business and I were creating a really beautiful relationship of devotion together, where there was able to be flow and commitment and inspired action and like outpouring of love into the business through every piece of it, so that it wasn't ever, so that the energy of my business was aligned and it would attract women who felt like soulmate clients, and that things would be in flow and just like attractive and magnetic and easy, because everything I was doing was from that place of love and from a place of enthusiasm and excitement, and that I would truly enjoy what it was that I was doing every day and in every season of my business as it was growing. And another piece was that I knew I wanted to make these big shifts in my life that were going to require something different from me. That would require a big commitment on my part, that would require, me to really be willing to trust a lot, which has been a theme since I started my coaching journey. But it's still, like devotion is, for me, it's also like a deep sense of trust. Like I may not make any money, but I am freaking devoted to this mission, come hell or high water kind of feeling, where it's like I am all in. Devotion being all in. And in the past, I had trouble really being all in on anything. I'd change my mind all the time. I'd be really wishy-washy. I'd be indecisive. I could tell I wasn't truly making decisions from a place of deep, it felt like intuition at the time, but I know that I wasn't making decisions from a deep place of true alignment and feeling dropped in and really clear first, and being able to be 2 feet in. I was always in my life before this year, I was always 1 foot in, 1 foot out on everything, which creates a really not as strong of an energy and as strong of a result or an impact as devotion does, being 2 feet in, right? So that was another piece of it, was I knew something big had to shift for me in the sense in how I was showing up and committing to things in my life. I saw it in relationships, really big. That's probably the biggest piece of my like lessons for the year, is the relationship piece, but the business piece has been maybe like the easier, bigger lesson. Relationships have been really hard to be devoted for me. So yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything tonight. This is about like the true lessons, the light and shadow, which is a beautiful piece, I think, of what you get when you choose a theme, right? Which we didn't mention that yet, is that it's both the light and the shadow. So like you might choose devotion and have these really beautiful fantasies of like, oh, I'm going to get engaged by the end of the year. I literally thought that when I
literally thought that too.
And that was like,
neither of us have a ring.
Nope. Yeah. And so the great, like picking a theme is an awesome practice too in releasing expectation, like letting it go and not not having any attachment to what this is going to look like, but just being open to experiencing the highs and the lows, the light and the shadow of this theme that you're choosing to become a master of. Because the beautiful thing about that is that sometimes we learn and grow so much more from the crap, from the shadow side, than we do from it being awesome, you know? And going through that up and down is what makes life beautiful, but it's also what helps us grow, you know, that like contraction and expansion of growth.
Yeah, so true. I love that you like, that is such one of the lessons I want to like talk about with devotions is like the release of expectation. But I love how you brought it in that no matter what theme you choose, you're going to see the shadow side, just like anything else in our business, in our life, in our relationships. Like nothing is all sugarcoating and nothing is all light, and there's always the dark. And I think you're the one that maybe said this to me first, but it's like something I use all the time now is the idea of an arrow and how you have to pull it back before it can really spring forward. And that's how I now see all those valleys and that shadow and that darkness is like those points when we're like pulling back, when we're contracting so that we can really expand, so we can really pull forward, so we can like fly that arrow straight and like on point. So
totally. Yeah. I love that. Also, side note, technical thing. I don't know if you've done this yet, but I think I saw Michelle was commenting in the comments on YouTube, and it said that she couldn't see you. So I think maybe if you just click on your picture at the bottom when you talk, that should bring your picture up.
Okay.
Sometimes it does it like automatically unless you like click on one of the pictures, and then it doesn't.
Perfect.
Or at least that's how it used to work. So if you just click on each of us when we talk, we should be good.
Yeah, I think that's how it's working with this one. I think it was a little different in the old version, but good to note. And yeah, if someone wants to leave a comment about how we sound too, because Emily, you're cutting out a little for me, but I'm getting most of it. So
okay.
I don't know what we'd do about it anyways, but here we are. And devotion, just sticking to it no matter what. So I feel like you started touching on this. So do you want to kind of move into, I think it'd be fun to like tell everyone a little bit of like what did happen to us throughout the year. So then as we talk about some of the lessons, we'll have these actual key points and like actual life circumstances to like use as examples, because I think that's what makes it feel really real and what really like gets the point across. And because I want like everyone to realize like what you really can get from like intentionally, you know, being aware throughout your year and having a focus like this and what comes across. So I also, before we go into that, felt like it was kind of fun. I know in the social media I posted it, but I thought it was fun, one, first to say the definition of devotion, which is really simple, but I remember when I thought of the word, I was like, well, I have to look up the definition because I don't want to pick a word that I don't feel completely aligned with its actual definition. And when I looked up the definition, I was like, all right, sold, like best definition ever. So the definition of devotion is love, loyalty, and enthusiasm for a person, activity, or cause. And just, you know, then when I thought that my theme also got to include love, loyalty, and enthusiasm, I was like, hell yeah. That's all. So I'm all about that. And so also for our call, just to kind of set an intention just for this space for us today, I pulled 2 cards before we started, and one was from the Goddess Oracle deck from Doreen Virtue. And it's the Medicine Woman card, and it's all about showing up for healing and about commanding it and not demanding it, and how we call it in by our presence. And I just really fell into that's how me and Emily are choosing to show up for you guys today, in our power, in our source of where we find this devotion, and just wanting to share it and put it out there and be present with you guys today. And then the tarot card I pulled is the Knight of Swords, who is a passionate person that's always moving forward, sometimes a little clumsily, sometimes too excited they're tripping over themselves, but always moving forward with force. And I just love this one explanation of it. So Let me just find that. Okay, it was, they will navigate the most tangled of obstacles to assist, achieving creative and rapid, but perhaps risky success. And so I just want to put that all out there for you for showing up today, that you are all ready for that success. And sometimes we do have to move into it so passionate that we aren't quite checking exactly where we're stepping, but we're ready to move forward, and that will come with ease over time. So thank you all for being here.
I love that.
Emily, I feel like
it's amazing.
I know, it's super fun. I feel like it resonated really well. So you want to talk about your journey of 2016 first?
Yes. Oh my gosh, totally. Thank you. I'm excited. Okay, so first thing, like I said, my expectation in a lot of ways was that I would at the beginning of 2017, I was really falling in love with the man of my dreams. I was like, oh my God, this guy, he showed up. How did this happen? In November of the previous year, I had written down 35, a list of 35 things that my dream man would have. And I manifested him in December, mid-December, a month later. It didn't take very long. And so I was with him in the beginning of 2017. We actually rang in the new year together, and I was like, this is the one, the end. That's it. We're getting engaged by the end of the year. Everything was so fast tracked. It actually felt like that, that card, passionately moving towards something and knowing it's the thing, and then stumbling because you're not sure where to put your feet because it's so you're so in it, and so passionate. But so that happened and was beautiful and amazing. And then it got to be too much, and we ended it, and then we restarted it when he moved here to Charleston. And so we're sort of navigating that space now, and it's interesting and different. So there's that. And so that didn't go as linear as I had planned at all. And I have this whole list of things that are great that happened, but I'm trying to pull out what are the pieces that didn't go as planned either, that didn't work out. For me, I think it was mostly in relationships. That was the most challenging piece for me. I was like, no, I need to be alone and figure all these things out and really be devoted to just me. And then I moved to Charleston. I broke up with everybody. It's no more men in my life. And then once I got here, I got really grounded really quickly, had an amazing community of women around me really fast. It was insane. And then things started picking up and business was good and it was easy. And I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to start dating again. So I met this other guy. It was a whole mess of being 1 foot in, 1 foot out in relationships and trying to figure out how I can be devoted and what that looks like and what that means for me in a relationship. So lots of amazing lessons there. In my business, I hired a VA, a virtual assistant, to support me, which I had never done before. I was really scared to do that and make the investment. And it felt like a huge leap of being can I afford this? Is it the right time? I don't know. Things are feeling a little overwhelming. I know I'm missing deadlines, not being as present with clients anymore because I have a bigger workload. And so I made the investment. I hired a virtual assistant. I started my podcast and interviewed 23 women this year, and also hosted a summit, which is basically my content to pre-populate the podcast. And that was 2 weeks, I think, or 17 days. So that was a big thing that I had never done before. That was totally new, and I was figuring it out as I went. I created a Facebook community for my tribe to engage. So we have a Q&A video every Tuesday. This is taking the place of that tonight, which is fun. And there are over 200 women in that group now, which is really awesome and feels successful. I moved to Charleston, which was a huge dream of mine for a while. Well, really my whole life. It wasn't always Charleston, but I knew I wanted to live on the coast near a beach in a place that was warmer. So I did it, which feels like a huge, like, big thing. Um, I built community and partnerships and a mastermind locally with some absolutely amazing women here in Charleston once I moved here. And um, one of the women who was part of that group was like, "You win the award for fastest, like, social connections made ever." So that felt really good to just, it was so easy. It just happened naturally. Like, I didn't really try very hard. I just started showing up at certain things and connecting with like-minded women and reaching out, and people were reaching out to me instead of me having to go to them. It was awesome. I launched the Soulful Branding Collective and completed 2 successful projects. So this is program a coaching program slash branding program that I've been working on with some colleagues of mine who are expert coaches in their field and intuitives and things like that. So there are 4 of us, and we've done some really cool work that I just kind of, together I came up with the idea and I presented it to them, and we created this brand new thing that's super awesome and soulful and really a deeper way of looking at business and an intuitive way of looking at business and a brand, from the energetic piece and also the really practical pieces, which is awesome. And we love doing that work. So I also spoke at Hatch Tribe and was featured on a lot of podcasts. Hatch Tribe is like a local community of women. So they have like monthly meetings and things. So it was a big honor to be like asked to speak there and be part of it. I've realized I was working with like soulmate dream clients. Like, they would say the things to me that I had wanted them to say in my vision when I wrote it on the first of the year. Like, it's so cool, and so awesome. And I'm just really, really grateful for all the women that I've been able to work with this year. I worked with more women than I've ever worked with. I don't know the final number on that, but I ran more group programs and had more one-on-one clients, and it was really, really beautiful. Let's see. I really learned how to slow down and get centered and stay devoted, like how to bring things back into perspective really quickly. Like, I feel like I mastered that piece to like, what do I need to do to bring myself back? Like, even better. I think we always just get better and better and better at that as we are evolving through coaching, whether it's receiving or giving or studying, whatever it is that you're doing that's related to coaching. It's you're practicing all the time. You're getting more efficient and more masterful of whatever it is that you're working on. So I felt really good about that. I ran some live sisterhood workshops at Urban Flow. I was on the board for a yoga conference, which was a huge like honor and super cool feeling. And I spoke there in Pittsburgh in October. I fell in love multiple times. Also told you I broke up with people multiple times. So that was a big mess, but maybe it's all working out. I was at the beach a lot. Like, I actually got to the beach a lot during the summer, and even now, like, I try to make it a point to get there because I don't want to be one of those people who lives by a beach and never goes, because that's like the worst thing in the world. I planned some amazing big live events for 2017. I partnered with Women for Women International to support a sister monthly and sponsor a woman's education who's in a recovering country like that's been at war, and the women are some of the only survivors. So I partnered with that organization, which is something I wanted to do for a really long time, but feels like an extension of my devotion to my mission. I voted for a woman in the presidential election. That was pretty cool. That's on my list of celebration. And voted for not just a woman, but many different women in on the ballot, which was cool. I stepped away from side and part-time work completely and just am focused on my business full-time. I reinvigorated my yoga practice. I was scouted as a ghostwriter, which was really random, but I thought was a fun thing to put on this list. So I did some ghostwriting for Huffington Post and Forbes and Entrepreneur and Business.com and some random things this year. I traveled a lot more than I thought I was going to. Like, I thought for some reason I'd just move to Charleston and be here, and really like travel picked up a lot. I was invited to go on trips with people. I went to New Orleans, Big Sur, San Francisco, like all up in California in that area, Asheville, New York City, Connecticut, Orlando, Charleston, Savannah. Like I traveled a lot. Um, so that was interesting thing that I didn't think would happen. But when I was traveling, I was also making connections with people. I created more financial stability in my business, which feels freaking amazing because that was not the case for a while. I invested in marketing support for my business. Like I hired a marketing coach, and I reinvigorated my yoga practice, which felt really, really good and like an active devotion for me. So it's a long list. Sorry to take up so much time.
Whatever. It's our celebration. I like
Yay.
love that you have a long list. I love that there's that many things that you have to celebrate and have to acknowledge that you like showed up for with this theme of devotion. So
yeah, it wouldn't have been possible or that long without devotion, that's for sure.
yeah, well, I think that's why it's almost like so fitting that your list like keeps going, because it's like that's exactly what you accomplished by like choosing devotion. It's like once you're devoted and you actually 100% show up, there's nothing, there's no question about it at that point. You don't, you put 2 feet in and they're gonna like start walking. And yeah, like we, you know, you may trip a few times and, you know, you may fall flat on your face, but when you're devoted, you get back up, wipe off the dirt off your shoulders and like keep on moving. And it's just, that's one of the biggest things I learned, is that like you stick with things in whatever way that means. Sometimes that means letting things fall off. Sometimes that means, you know, powering through and really doing everything you can. Sometimes it means like calling in like a coach, like hiring someone to assist you so you can be there 100% even more. So, you know, like sometimes it means like sitting back and like trusting, like you said, and just letting like the universe do its thing and believing in that and believing that you're there and you set your intention out there and it will manifest. So I just think there's like also so many ways we can be devoted. I think when we started this year and I chose this, I think what I thought of devotion, I thought like this very like powering through, like, you know, working so hard at everything, you know, just this very like, I don't know, kind of masculine energy of being devoted. And I think that maybe comes from, you know, this, we think of devoted as kind of like, it comes up with religion so much. And I mentioned this to Emily earlier, but I just was having some fun when I was writing notes for this webinar, Googling devotion. And I Googled devotion to yourself. And you know how when Google will finish your sentence for you, basically, of other things people have searched for. Devotion for yourself did not come up. I had to type the full thing out. What did come up was devotion to God, devotion to your work, devotion to your partner, devotion to love, devotion to power, devotion to everything but yourself. And that was where my biggest lesson in devotion came this year. Was I even thought that, you know, my original list, because I went back when I wrote my celebration list and the things I accomplished this year, I also then went back to the beginning of my journal and read my like 10 goals I wrote for this year. And it's so funny because in a lot of ways, I really did accomplish every single goal, but none of them were like how I stated it. Like none of it, you know, I had this very like blanket way of like how I was going to get everything done. And just, you know, I was going to be devoted to my relationship and make it work no matter what. I was going to be devoted to my business and make that work no matter what. I was going to be devoted to like yoga and like just all these things I had that I was like, I'm going to be devoted to all these things. And when most of those things did not go so well in the beginning of my year, I felt like lost. Like I remember in the middle of my year looking at my list of goals and being like, shit, I am like not even close to accomplishing this. But what I realized with devotion was like it came down to not being devoted to everything outside of myself. Like that was my problem. That was my distraction, was that I was devoting myself to all of these things, but ignoring the devotion to myself. And it's so intertwined. And so when I kind of clued into that, it was like this eye-opening moment where I just like, you know, it was the aha moment where I was like, oh, if I'm devoted to myself, then I'm naturally going to be devoted to everything I care about, everything I want to be doing, everything that defines me, everything I'm passionate about. And it's all just going to align easier. And that was what was important to me. And I think that was the key that like got me over that hump too. I think the hump of where I was at was not being in my authentic true self. And I think getting devoted to myself was like what took me to being to that place of just feeling like authentic and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm here. It's where I've been working for and it's coming naturally. And so it's like, I seriously could almost split my year in half of like the first half being like the dark side, the like falling on my face. And like, then it's almost like I accepted that and just started letting it happen. Like I was just like, all right, hands in the air. And that's where like the trust kind of came in and the like knowing what I was devoted to, as I was like, all right, this is happening. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just going to like let it go and stop worrying about it for a couple of months. And that's when I like gave myself that break, and the universe really did freaking have my back. And like I pulled up through and started moving forward. So that's what then made it really fun. I feel like even a few months ago, I did not think that I would be reading off the list I'm about to read off to you guys. So yeah, in my 2016, the first month I spent doing a 30-day juice and broth cleanse. So I did not eat food for all of January, and I made it, and I didn't kill anyone around me.
I remember that. I remember that happening.
What? That was crazy. That was one of those devotion things that it was like, Courtney, that was not necessary. You could have just chilled out and done like 10 days and you would have been cool. Like I just did 10 days, like I just finished this week, and 10 days is easy. 30 is like, I took it too far. And then, which I do, that's a lesson I'm learning, is I love how you said it. Oh, I'll click on my thing. Yes, remind me. Okay. Thank you.
I'm just watching
that reminder
to see if it changes.
I am not only is Mercury in retrograde, but technology is still, we're slowly working on our relationship.
There you go.
One of the relationships I'm working on this year. So yeah, and then in February, my relationship ended. I also graduated from Mentor Masterclass that month. I got my first 2 paying coaching clients, which was really exciting for me. But it didn't feel exciting, you know? At the time, I was kind of like already like one of my goals felt like it was like cut off the list. Like, you know, my relationship ending kind of just took me like, okay, well, I failed at that devotion. You know, that was like where my brain was at that point. But I took myself, one of my goals was to leave the country. And so I took myself to Mexico on a trip to Baja all by myself. And that was the most enlightening experience. If you haven't just taken yourself on vacation to somewhere where it's not your first language and you don't know anything about it, do it, because you get all the space in the world to just feel. And the first couple of days was scary, and the second couple of days were amazing. And that was a moment where I started moving forward out of the place I was in of feeling stuck. So what else happened? I received a car and fixed it up. I moved my massage studio I left one studio and moved it to a new studio. I started a weekly or webinar thing that was going to turn into a podcast, and then actually ended up opting out of that. I really feel like there's a lot of things this year that I started and then didn't happen, and I want to bring those in because that like ties into one of the lessons I think with devotion of how when we're devoted to the stuff that really isn't serving us or doesn't feel 100% aligned, or we don't totally have 2 feet in, we let go of, you know, whether sometimes it just falls off on its own, and sometimes we consciously just get to that point where we're like, okay, we are devoted to our lives and we no longer have room for the things that we aren't 100% on board with or don't feel like a priority. And so that's what happened to me a lot this year, was I got really excited about all these projects in the beginning of the year. And then I kind of got to the point where I realized, like, one, I was taking on too much, 2, none of them are coming to fruition, and the ones that didn't feel 100% there for me were the things I needed to kind of let go of. So that was one of those things. I did do a couple webinars in the beginning of the year. I also hosted a one-day women's retreat. Hi. You want to say goodnight? You want to say hi to everyone first? This is my beautiful daughter. She's going to bed. Love you. Good night. You have lipstick on your face now. All right. See you in the morning, babe.
Aw, I love her.
I know. She's the sweetest. I was like, don't worry. You can come down and say goodnight if you want to. Because she gets all like, ooh, what time's your webinar over? When can I talk again?
So sweet. Look
yeah,
at that devotion, by the way.
Well, that's, and that's the thing too, is so many things fell into place more naturally, actually stuff with my daughter had been really hard. We were coming through like a lot of struggles with like her emotional well-being, and me kind of going through my own transformation really, I think gave us a lot of lessons to work through, but it sometimes made it really hard to like relate and work through it. And this year it's like that relationship just blossomed in a way that is miraculous to me, and me and her have a so much stronger relationship this year than we ever have, and that's been really awesome. So I do feel like I became a better parent from just like the devotion to myself, which then realized like my family was a priority. So I like had actually started bartending again this year, and then ended up quitting it because at first I was like, okay, well, we need more money. I need to be working more. I really, this business isn't quite taking off where I want to be, and I can't just be waiting for that to happen. And within 3 months of trying to do that, I just was like, no way, we will figure it out. I cannot be bartending, one, because it takes me away from them and sucks my soul away also. But just making decisions like that, I was like, no, we can wait. We can wait for me to be running the business and be home more and be with my family more and just be happier, to be living the life I really want to be living. It makes me better at everything. It makes me better me, which makes me a better parent and a better businesswoman and a better therapist and a better, coach and a better person in a relationship and all of that. So what else happened this year? Yeah, I really think then I kind of let myself do whatever for a couple of months, and that was crazy and wild. And I came out of it though with kind of this out of the mud and washed myself off into clarity. And that was when this fall I moved into a studio that felt super aligned and like the perfect fit. And that's when I really did actually finally start my yoga practice and on a regular yoga practice, and just really changed my lifestyle to something that felt super aligned, that I'd been wanting to do and been talking to do and been faking it and just not quite there. And that's one thing that I really feel super proud about, is just that it took the time to kind of go through the release, go through the like dirty, messy parts of all of it, and stay devoted through all of that to get to where I'm at. And that's, what brought me here, where instead of kind of closing out my year and looking back and being like, oh, I didn't accomplish this or this didn't go right, and being able to acknowledge those things, but also like, I just feel like geared up now for my next year. Like, I feel like I went through all of this devotion and these lessons this year to now be like laying this foundation to be moving forward this year. So these like past couple months have been all about like, instead of wrapping up a year, like, how do I prepare for next year? Okay, I laid the groundwork. So it's like I went more pro with like my health and beauty products, like got a graphic designer to actually design my labels, got them through an actual company that makes nice vinyl stickers. I, with massage, just stepped it up, raised my prices, started offering like more spa-like things, stepped up my game there. And that's just where everything's kind of then fallen into place. And so it's kind of funny how things have went through, because a lot of things that were lost, I felt so sad about. And really, I ended up getting a better option of most of them in the end by staying through devoted. Like, I was really sad about having to move my massage studio. And then I found this one that like just feels so perfect. I was super sad about my relationship ending, and it's kind of now just beginning all over again with a whole new commitment in a place that I never thought it would be in. And that feels insane and exciting and scary. And but I feel like that was my devotion of having to choose to like let go at some points and trust at some points and work through and just stay showing up. So that is kind of, that's a lot of my year. And I think, you know, one of the other things I wanted to mention in like the changes this year is some of those positive changes that really also let go of some other things. You know, I feel like a lot of friendships kind of died off this year. A lot of, you know, just things that didn't fit me any longer died off that maybe used to be like a part of my community or a part of my identity. And that felt really sad. And I went through maybe like a grieving process with that. But now I'm adjusting to this, like I said earlier, about just like feeling in your own skin again and feeling into this new self and this new version of yourself. And I think I'm just ending this year where that's what devotion means to me, is that like, you know, I'm so devoted that like what fell away doesn't, you know, it should be honored, but doesn't really matter. You know, like I'm so happy with where I'm at and I feel so aligned with myself that, you know, it's just, I'm here 100%, and what's with me is with me and what's not is not for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my gosh, so many things. I also feel like, what was the thing I was thinking? I was just looking at this Pinterest board I made for devotion
Mm-hmm.
for my theme in 2016, in the beginning of the year. And there are so many beautiful quotes on here, and they're all about like love and about trust and about having your spirit excited and never giving up and all these things. I kind of just want to read like a couple of them randomly as I scroll through.
Yeah,
So
please do.
one is, let's see, let's go back to the beginning. Okay. One is act without expectation, which I feel like that's exactly what devotion is. It's like taking action, releasing expectation, and trusting that because you are showing up fully and acting on what it is that you are desiring and you're devoted to that thing and your energy is focused, it will always create a positive result, but you don't know exactly what it's going to look like. You just have to trust that you're going to be taken care of. That's been a big lesson for me too. And I also remembered that a big part of my devotion, my year of devotion, was working with goddess archetypes. Like I forgot that that was, because I haven't been doing it the past couple months. I've taken a break because I'm not teaching it right now. And I'm starting back off with that in January in the new program that I'm running. But that was a huge, I mean, that practice made the biggest difference in my world, because that practice is all about devotion in a way, you know, like really being devoted to honoring and embodying a piece of yourself that's been disowned, you know, an expression of your femininity, an expression of your womanhood, an expression of who you are, that we've been told as women is not enough, or is too much, or isn't valuable, or whatever, and bringing that piece of us back into wholeness. And I feel like that was a huge theme too, was like feeling whole and feeling fulfilled in a deep way that I never felt whole and fulfilled and present and joyful before in my life. Like devotion cracks you open.
Yeah.
Because you have to get so real with what really matters and what is, you know, happening.
Yeah. And I love that
lead,
because,
you know?
yeah, you not only like the cracking open, then while you're speaking of archetypes makes me think about how then it's like all the different parts of ourselves are then vulnerable and out there to be shared. And that's where there's the light shadow qualities, and there's, you know, the parts of us that are necessary to pull in sometimes for some aspects of our lives, and others, this other part of us is so necessary. And like when we like open up to that devotion, like we get in tune with how to like tune into that. And like your art, like the way you teach archetypes is so perfect for that, because it teaches you to kind of tune into this aspect of yourself when you either desire that quality, or when that quality is necessary, or when it just feels good. And I think that's super important. And I think that's, you know, so part of all of this is the journey, you know, kind of like showing up how we need to at different parts of the journey. And I think that's a theme of like, as we both have like shared what our year kind of went like, that's the one thing I like kind of is that by being devoted, we had to like be where we were at, and some of those places weren't always great, and some of those places were amazing, and some of, you know, we had to call in these different parts of ourselves to show up and be devoted at that specific time for that specific thing. And you know, and just be there for the journey and be present. And that's where I love that you bring up the like no expectation, because that really is like when you're being present. And I think with devotion you really tune into that.
Totally. Yeah. And devotion, I feel like, is all about the journey, like you were saying, and it's not about a result, you know, like it's also inherently what I learned is that devotion, I was telling Courtney this before we went live, but I can't remember where exactly I heard this. It might have been from Alison Armstrong's work. I can't remember. But I learned that there was this one piece of something I was listening to that popped out at me, and I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Cause I'm, you know, on high alert about anything devotion related through the whole year, cause it's my theme. So I learned that devotion is actually how we are wired and what is most, the approach and the perspective that feels most in flow for us as women and feels most natural. Because I can't remember where I heard this, but women don't actually have honor. Like men are hardwired with honor. Women are hardwired for devotion. It's so fascinating. This is one of the things that like blew my freaking mind this year. I was like, what? Changing everything I understood to be true. Oh my God. Like that word, even just the energy of it. And what I found with my clients too, is that devotion is completely a transformational approach. And it's something that taps us right into our feminine essence and a feminine approach and a feminine energy, you know, within us, that we're able to approach something from this place that feels much more relaxed and easeful and in flow than it would feel to be in that space of commitment and obligation. There's a different energy and a different weight to the word devotion and to the concept. And it's a totally different approach than commitment or honoring or accountability even, you know, like those words all sound so heavy and rigid. And this is like such a beautiful extension. It's like leading with your soul, leading with your heart, leading and loving and living from a place of enthusiasm and joy and love and devotion to a cause, you know, and to yourself and to your desires. So that was a big one for me too. Like the approach of devotion, like what does it look like to be devoted to something versus to be in commitment or to be in obligation or to be relating to whatever it is that you're doing from a different place. And what is the outcome? Like, how is the outcome different? How is the result different if I use the approach of devotion versus obligation? Like, it's a difference between, there's also something very sacred about it to me, that it feels very special and like spiritual than something like commitment or a goal, you know? Like to approach something from a place of devotion is a totally different energy and a totally different result, because the perspective and the intention is completely different to serve from a place of love and enthusiasm.
Ooh, I love the way you said all of that, because what I actually like realized, you know, since you first told me that before we went live, was just thinking about how that resonated with me so much. And then I clued into, like, as I was then talking about getting over this hump, that like, oh, the reason it clicked this year is because it's devotion and because it's not commitment or accountability or all these other words. Like, honestly, my inner rebel just like fights those words when I, you know, when I say it that way. I don't want to do it because, one, I feel pushed to do it. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel in flow. It doesn't feel aligned. It doesn't feel from a place of love or loyalty or enthusiasm. It feels from a place of like, this is what I have to do because that's what I said I was going to do. And this is what I should do. And this is what someone told me to do, or wherever that comes from. It's such a, you know, forceful thing. And that's so masculine. And that's so just does not feel good or easy. And it makes it feel like work, and it makes me not want to do it, honestly. And devotion, I'm doing the work, I'm doing all of it, but it feels good because it feels easy, and it feels in flow, and it feels at my own pace, and it feels like I can bring whatever version of myself I need to, and it feels feminine, and it feels, you know, aligned. And that's just the way you said that and brought that up is just such an eye-opener to me of why this word also is what actually made some of the lifestyle changes I'd been working on making for years actually happen this year. That's huge. And that's huge for all women out there to think about how the subtleties of words and how we view something actually resonates with the entire energy of how we live.
Yeah.
You know, choosing a word that feels good for you really can change the way you do everything. And that to me has been a big lesson that I've learned from being in the coaching world and choosing words very intentionally, is that everything carries energy, and choosing something where the energy feels good is so necessary. So I love that. I love that explanation. And I'd love to like talk a little bit about that idea though of like not having expectation or not looking for the result, and what that meant this year for both of us. Cause I think it just really made it about the journey, made it about presence, but how we, you know, I know when we first talked about planning this webinar, we just like talked about how also like it just became about fun, you know, that enthusiasm, because we take the 3 words from the definition of devotion, and it's like love. So here's the reasons why we stay devoted to something. One is love. And so we do it simply because it brings us joy, because we love it, because we are in love with it or that person or whatever it is. And then loyalty, because we feel committed, because it's our true purpose. It's what, you know, it's our why. And we are loyal to it because it is a part of us. And then enthusiasm is like straight up like fun. It's just like, this is what we want to do because it feels good. And so I just think that's like so interesting to just think about the different reasons why we stay devoted, and how none of those are really tied to like the actual result. They're all tied to why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it too. It's like devotion makes you come back into the why and into the feeling and check in constantly. Does this feel good or not?
I have to write that down.
And if it doesn't feel good, how can I shift it so that it does? How can it feel more in flow or easy? How can it feel more fun? That was a question I asked my clients and myself like all year. What would make this more fun?
Yeah, well, that was one of the questions. And this is, you know, I know we talked about kind of like doing this at the end as like something to pass on to people. But it's what you passed on to me was that question, was kind of like asking yourself in those moments when it feels hard, like, how can this feel easy? How can this feel fun? Like, what feels good? And that, you know, practice of checking in with yourself is just so huge. And I started doing, you know, in the beginning of the year, I was doing it every morning, like waking up, like, how do I want to feel today? What would feel easy? What would feel good? How could I achieve my desired feeling? How could I stay devoted to myself through that? And, you know, like you talked a little bit earlier, like you kind of then almost ease out of having to actually practice because it becomes such a practice. And I think that's one thing with devotion is it's about practice. And the more you practice, the more it just becomes a part of you, and it's no longer hard or something you have to think about. It just comes and flows.
Yeah. And along with that, there's a piece, something else that I love to talk about is inspired action. Like how can we take action towards something and have it feel like it's from a place of devotion, like joy and enthusiasm and loyalty for a cause or a mission or a thing or a person or whatever. instead of that energy of obligation. And what happens when we do that, it actually, I think, it activates a different piece of our brain. Like we're no longer operating from that adrenaline push, that testosterone push. It's actually, it uses a different piece of our brain. We don't go into the pushing and the striving. Um, and so we can actually activate a different part of our brain, which doesn't cause us to burn out. Testosterone is the reason we burn out. Testosterone release stress, for women. So it's, our hormones get all funky and then we burn out and we can't do anything because our bodies are shot because we haven't paid attention to the cycles and the rhythms and what actually feels good, and operate from a place that we're wired to operate optimally from. So that's something that's become a cornerstone of everything I teach now. So this year has been really impactful in that too, like in the way I approach things, the way I coach people, the way I run my own life. It's hugely different. And I think I have a couple more notes too about like just overarching lessons. One is that devotion allows us to focus on the feeling and the vision instead of the how, which often overwhelms us and keeps us stuck and small instead of getting us right into action and enjoying the journey, right? And enjoying the whole process start to finish.
Yeah. And I love that, like, just to tie into, like, then it's like, we don't know how the how's going to look. So just being open to
right,
whatever and being able to be flexible in our how.
Yeah, in the approach. Yeah. And I think that's another piece of like releasing the expectation, right? And letting that go is being able to be like, okay, here's the intention. I'm totally surrendering. I'm just going to do what feels good. And that's what is going to get me to the results that's going to be ultimately in my best interest. But also recognizing that we don't necessarily know anything sometimes, right? Like sometimes the best we can do is just trusting, because what we do know at any moment is how it feels. And that's, I believe, how the universe or God or our intuition speaks through us, is through feeling and the way something feels. So if something feels off or contracted, or it makes us feel icky, or it just makes us feel a way that we don't want to feel, or it feels like a violation of our boundaries or something, that's our cue to do something different and to find what does work. And I feel like devotion is such a great teacher in that, because we're able to look at something that feels off, and the way we might normally do it is push through. And with devotion, we say, absolutely not. What would actually feel fun? And I'll just do that. And I'll wait for more guidance to come from that spot. Because when I'm in that energy of fun and love, I'm much more open to receiving guidance anyway.
Yes.
And that's when I'm tuned in, right? So it's about plugging in often too, like allowing yourself to be plugged in all the time, tuned in to your higher self, to the guidance that you're able to receive in any moment from whatever source you believe it comes from. Doesn't matter. That's what it's about too, I think, is that constant plugging in and getting in a space and an energy, constantly cultivating love, enthusiasm, loyalty all the time, let's see. I also said, we talked about presence and tuning in. And then I loved that passion and forward movement came up in that card, because it was like, duh. Okay. Yeah, of course. That's what devotion is too. It's following those breadcrumbs of joy and passion and love and enthusiasm, right? And in doing that, we create forward movement, because the energy that we're infusing every step with is the highest vibration possible. And so we're receiving that, and we're receiving that echo back from the universe, because that's what we're putting out. Let's see. I think there's also a piece of this that's like service and the bigger picture. And for me, that was a big piece. And I want to just say that, living from a space of devotion has made me feel so much more powerful in my life, like able to raise my rates, able to be able to put out money toward Women for Women, an organization I support now in my business, like being willing and able and trusting to be able to embody devotion constantly, and as an effect, like have other people see that and be like, what are you doing? Like there's something different, and I want to learn how to do that, you know? I want to learn how to be in that space where I'm open and loving and nurturing and devoted to a mission, and I'm not willing to give up. I'm not one foot in, one foot out, you know? And I think that for us who are business owners, or just anything that you're wanting to call in to your experience, is so important, because the energy of commitment is such a clear channel. The energy of devotion is such a clear channel that it opens up that the blockages that normally exist in our way of receiving whatever it is that we're calling in. um yeah, and then the cycles and rhythms piece I think is important too, like devotion and being such a feminine quality. It allows us to honor the pieces of us that are non-linear, that are constantly changing, that are constantly evolving, because devotion doesn't necessarily look the same way from one moment to another. You know, devotion changes shape and form all the time, which is beautiful, because I can be devoted to my mission if I'm meeting new people and having wine at happy hour, or I can be devoted to my mission if I'm sitting in front of my computer writing, or I can be devoted to my mission if I'm traveling to Europe. Like I can be devoted in any form. It's just the energy and the intention behind what it is I'm doing that's always consistent. You know, there's always a vision and a mission there underlying my action, and it's taking inspired action that feels guided and like a pull from my soul versus like from my head, oh I have to kind of thoughts.
Yeah, it's that driving force
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that guides us. I love that.
Yeah, those are all
Mm.
my thoughts about devotion.
Yeah, I think the only thing I like also wanted to add in that I had in my notes of one of my lessons was just like how devotion really blended well with my curiosity. You know, being devoted helped me really get curious to like, one, what it meant, two, how I could do it, and three, like being open to these, as we're talking about, like the rhythms and the cycles, and how, you know, you have to let go of the result and just trust sometimes. How sometimes we thought we were going to do things this one way, and that's how we were going to, you know, that was how we were devoted to it, and we're devoted to this path, and we're devoted to this way of getting to where we want and this goal. And how we have to then get curious about like, okay, well, we're on this path and maybe this doesn't feel quite right, or this isn't going quite right, or we like don't see where we're going anymore, and just getting curious about how to shift. And I think being open to that curiosity of what it could mean also like led me down all these different paths and these different ways of achieving where I got to, because I definitely think I thought the end of my year was going to look completely different than it does now. And in some ways, some of the same things I wanted at the beginning of the year are happening, but they happened in a totally different way than I expected. And that was all with me, like one, showing up, two, being curious, and like three, letting go. And I was wondering if we could kind of, as our last little segment before we like end with some fun inspired action ideas for everybody. When we were planning this call, we kind of had an interesting conversation about that, about the ideas of when we're so stuck to our goal and our result, and those feelings that come along with this, all this masculine energy and push and pull and commitment and responsibility, and how that kind of can lead us in this downward spiral sometimes. And how then we kind of like, we're talking about then the opposite being devotion, and how that creates an upward spiral. So I just feel like you said it so perfectly when we were on the call. So I was wondering if you remembered exactly how you said that, if we could tune into that for a little bit.
I don't remember exactly how I
said it. Oh man, I was hoping, because I have it in my notes, but so vaguely that I was like, I wonder if she remembers. But I think it was just that kind of, like I said, that we were talking about these opposite ways of going about things.
Yeah. I think what I probably said was something along the lines of, either way, it's a choice that we make, whether we want to go with devotion or we want to go with, you know, a word that, an approach and a perspective that holds a different energy to it. Or, you know, we can choose to either create an upward spiral with ease, or we can struggle the whole time to try to go to try to stay in the same spot, right? Like we can fight ourselves and our instincts and the way that we're designed and wired and what feels good. We can fight that as much as we want. We can continue to believe that life has to be hard in order to make progress. We can continue to believe that we have to struggle and face challenges and be a lone warrior by ourselves and trying to do it all alone if we want to. Like, that's a choice you get to make. You know, you get to choose in every moment whether you're going to go that way or you're going to go this way. You know, you get to choose whether you're going to make it hard for yourself or whether you're going to make it easy. So that's something, I don't know if that's how I said it, but I think
I don't know if that's exactly it, but that is definitely, yeah, that's what I was kind of going for to get into that idea of, you know, kind of letting things flow upward and allowing that like ease and grace to take us there. And yeah, and just how it doesn't have to be hard. I feel like that was a biggest like lesson through this, is that like we can be doing the work, but the work doesn't have to feel hard. I think sometimes when we're in that energy that we're talking about of like struggle and being stuck or like ending up in kind of like a downward spiral of like not doing things the way that feels good, it's just us. We like, I don't know. I sometimes used to cling to this like warrior mentality of like the harder I worked, the like, you know, this pride in that. Like, oh, I worked so hard. I'm so tired. I only slept like 3 hours last night. Like, look at all I got done today. Like this like work so hard until you like barely exist mentality. And, you know, and I think even when I started this year, I still kind of had, even though I'd been letting go of that, I think I had a little bit of that left of like, the devotion was going to be like, I had to really work really, 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 really hard. And it was kind of so much the, you know, the lesson was that it's kind of the opposite. Like you have to like lean into letting things be easy, and you have to let go of the idea that life is hard and that it has to be struggle and that we have to be struggling to actually be getting somewhere, when really we're holding ourselves back by staying in that state of struggle and hardship. And we really are letting ourselves move forward by becoming lighter with ease, becoming lighter with present, getting closer to the light, like choosing love, like all of this. So thank you so much for getting me back to that one last little tidbit I wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah, I think there's a different, right? Like what you were saying, what stuck out to me was the glorification of busy and burnout. Like we can choose to stay in that paradigm, or we can choose something else. And I think the power of choosing a theme is being able to hold a new frame for yourself for a full year, where you're like, okay, there's definitely going to be a huge shift in you and the way that you approach everything. And the way that you see the world, the way that you interact with the world, the way that you interact with yourself, you know, everything, every piece of your life will dramatically change. In a beautiful way. And like you said, you know, if we were to read those lists of things that we accomplished this year, they definitely didn't come from doing what we thought we should do, or from pushing so hard that we felt exhausted, or from losing all sense of balance in our life and just going all in on the business side. Like that is not what's going to work to get you to the next level ever. It works to a certain point, and then we realize, oh, wait, that's not going to work anymore. And we have to sort of shed that old system and embody something new.
And that's the thing, is that it's that up leveling. It's kind of moving to that next level. We can get this far trying to make money and, you know, run our business and do all these things this certain type of way. But, you know, there's a next level when we really let go of that mentality and that way of living. And I think that's, you know, and that's a perfect way to really get to wrapping up with this, is just that thought of what we want to shift in ourselves and what subtle shifts we want to see of how we live and how we relate to the world. And, you know, coming from this call, I like think it'd be interesting for everyone to really think about what devotion means to them and how they can see it in their lives and how they would want to see it come up differently. Maybe what their old paradigm was when it came to the idea of devotion, and what new paradigm they'd like to adapt to and move into, and how they can just see that come up, it's just one of those, when we focus, we start noticing these little things, and what can you learn by tuning into that? And, and what do you want to tune into to start working towards? I love this idea of, I took a heart chakra workshop on Sunday, and we were talking about the heart chakra being like air, and how with the air, it like can fill a bubble, or any space you provide for it. So like the bigger the space you provide, the more it can fill, and and then sometimes you have to like take it small and tight and internal, and sometimes you have to give it. And I really feel like kind of that way with devotion, or any type of theme you pick, is this idea of letting it fill whatever space you give it. And so where do you want to see this theme, or this commitment, or this devotion, or this shift in yourself? Like, what area do you want to see it fill up, and how big of a space do you want to give it to let it fill up?
I love that. I'm writing these questions so we can post them in the Facebook event page for everybody too.
Awesome.
I want to see what they have to say.
Yay.
Yeah, like, what does devotion mean to you now that you've heard this call, and you've been here, and you've watched this and heard our own journeys about devotion? Because like Courtney said in the beginning, like, we oftentimes, the ways in which we've heard about devotion is devotion to something outside of ourselves, not to our desires, not to ourselves, not to our self-care, not to being all in on a mission that's of service, in a bigger picture. But, it's not like we're worshiping a deity by being devoted. It's about what is really, where am I putting my energy right now? What is the love, loyalty, and service that I want to provide in the world, in this moment, in every moment? What does that look like? And constantly checking in with ourselves and asking ourselves, what am I devoted to right now? What am I devoted to today? What am I devoted to this week? And being able to check in and tune in consistently with ourselves. And I also want to add too, like, how can you, I don't know, that's the same question. Yeah, like, where do you want this devotion, or what do you want to devote yourself to this year? Moving into 2017, what are the changes you want to see, and why? And I think connecting to your why, like, what's the why behind why you do what you do?
Yeah, and I love that question. Just, I know part of picking a theme is, doing that instead of maybe picking a New Year's resolution. But I love that other option of bringing in this question of like, what are you devoted to? And then taking that energy with it. Because like we talked about, it's just this different feminine energy, and kind of going at what you want to do in the coming year with devotion from this different place, and how you're ready to show up for the journey, whatever that may entail.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why is it important that you stay devoted?
Yeah. And that can be so simple, or such a huge, long explanation of what that means to you. And that's, I think that's important to find that, sometimes you just do something because it feels fun, because it brings you joy. And sometimes it's a cause that you stand by because of, something that came up in your life that you now want to commit to being devoted to that cause. There's such a wide range of reasons why we do things, and just tuning into that, and that they're all there, and they're all to be honored, and that, hold this sacred space of devotion that we're just talking about today. So
yay.
I'm excited to like, that's what I was just going to say, because of course I'm surprised we haven't talked over each other more this webinar. We did a good job of
brain.
We did a really good job of letting each other speak today. But yes, I can't wait to hear everyone's answers, and please feel free to ask us more questions or get in touch with either of us separately. Obviously, you can find us both on Facebook through any of this social media. Or, then from there you can find our emails or ways to get in touch with us for coaching. Emily has such an amazing program coming up in January that I would highly recommend to anyone. I know we touched on some of the stuff that will be covered in it and why it's so exciting and important. And stay tuned with me. I am from this year creating an e-course based on my year experience down to a 3-month program. So that was one of the things I started this year and hoped to finish by the end, and I didn't. And I feel totally fine about that because I feel like I have so much more to give now that I was waiting and patient. So stay in touch with both of us. Ask us any questions. Share with us what you learned from this call about devotion, and share anything you want to tell us about your coming new year too, because I want to celebrate everyone and what they learned from their year. Maybe share your theme and what came up for you, or what's coming up for you in the new year.
Yay! I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you, Emily. It's such a pleasure to hang as always. So
you too.
All right.
I know it's sad we don't live in the same town
now. Oh my gosh, I'm coming to visit you this spring. I can't wait. I need that beach in my life and some of your hugs.
Yes.
So, and I guess we should end too. Happy solstice, everyone. Tomorrow is the shortest day and the longest night. So embrace the darkness that we've experienced this year and find the way to celebrate the light, even when it's small. And for many people, this is kind of the end of the year. It's the end of a season. And so take a moment tomorrow to really set the intention you want for the new season. Happy solstice.
Yay,
happy holidays. Solstice. Everything we all celebrate. Happy you guys. Happy us. All right. Love you. Good night.
Love you. Mwah.